Yes.
You know, you can be seated. I just love how you all are you just stand there until we tell you. It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm going to tell you, I got a lot of thoughts about heaven. And you all know me and my thoughts sometimes are, well, you know, they seem like a good idea at the time, you know, that type of thing. But I've thought a lot about heaven, like what I want heaven to be like or what it might be like. And so here's my deal. First off, I'd like to get to heaven, and I really hope there's like one of them, you know, trailers going that tells us all the things that we want to know, all the questions we have. Like, you know, I talked about a couple Sunday nights ago on our AMP service, you know, we get caught up in the stupid, you know, like a lot of stupid stuff in the Bible that does not matter to our spirit. We have arguments over things that don't matter when it comes to our salvation and those types of things. So I think, you know, it'd be great to have that, and God could just, you know, show everybody who's right, who's wrong, you know, that type of thing, exactly how things go. So that'd be great. I can't wait to see my granny, my family that's passed on before me. You know, that'll be awesome. I can't imagine what it's going to be like. But here's what I kind of hope and pray that is up there. When I was a kid, there was some show, I don't know. The boy was an Indian boy. And if anybody, I've tried to find, I can't find it, but if anybody knows what I'm talking about, he was an Indian boy and he could fly somehow with the, I don't know, like, Indian spirits or something. I don't know. But I wanted to fly. I wanted to be that guy. I made cardboard wings. I was jumping off everything, the couch, the chair, flopping my wing. I wanted to fly. That's what I wanted to do. I even asked my mom, I said, Mom, I think if I can just get on the roof, I can fly. And she said, son, you're not getting on the roof to fly. So I am hoping and praying that when I get up there, I'm just going to be able to fly everywhere. I'm assuming, you know, that I'm just going to be able, but that's what I imagine heaven will be. And I will fly like the cutest little bird you ever seen in your life when I get up there. So it'd be great. So we can only imagine what it's going to be like whenever we get there. We have a little bit of a glimpse. You know, the Bible tells us what it's going to look, but I don't really think we can comprehend what heaven is going to look like when we get there and the glory of it all. And I think if everybody could understand that and knew that, every church house in America would be packed, you know, people wanting to get to heaven. But that's just my opinion. Pastor Dennis took a couple days off. Was it anniversary? No, it just went. Okay. I was thinking, I had it in my head, anniversary. Well, they took a couple days off, and he asked me if I would step in and say the message this morning. I said, sure, absolutely. I already have one. I hope, honestly, what I want to talk about today is probably more like a 4-part series. I already have another one that goes along with it, follow-up. So when he allows me to come up here again, that may be the one you get. The good Lord doesn't say that it follows up this one. And what I'm going to talk about today probably needs to be, 2 or 3 week series. But we're going to try to get it all in there today. I'm going to be open and honest with everyone today because I feel like I'm probably speaking. I don't feel like I know that I'm speaking to some of you sitting out there because I know your stories. I know some things you're going through, and that's fine. But I have a feeling I'm also speaking to others that don't, maybe want to admit or don't want to acknowledge certain things. So as your associate pastor, your youth pastor, I'm going to be as blatantly open and honest with you as I can today on some things I've struggled with lately. I know I've mentioned this before a few times, but, just kind of hit the high notes on it. But our message title today is, Do You Wanna? Do you wanna? Do you want to? And it'll make sense when I get to those verses. But I want to talk about mental health today. I think a lot of times in the church world, mental health, I want to say maybe it's taboo. We don't want to talk about it a lot. We feel like we're weak if we have, if we have issues in our mind, so to speak. If we got things going on, we don't want people to know. We don't want this, we don't want that. And maybe that's the way we was raised, kind of the way I was raised. But over the years of being a youth pastor, I grew up in the mentality just pull your big boy drawers up and let's go. And I think there is some of that needed. I mean, we need to be a more resilient. We need to build resilience in our lives. I believe the Bible calls us to do that. I believe that is our responsibility to move towards Jesus and His grace and His healing. But our faith has to meet Jesus' grace, God's grace. It has to do that. But all of us, I'm a type A personality. I like to get things done. I like to fix everything. I'm pretty good at organizing things, and I go. My mom went, and I guess I got that gene, and for the most part, I'm good with that. I don't, I wouldn't want to be any other way. I like to go. I like to do things. I don't like to idle hands. I don't really have idle hands in my life, so to speak. So, in a way, that can be good, but in a way, that can be bad. Especially if you're not willing to admit when the go needs to stop, or slow down a little bit, type of thing. You need to turn things down. Just to give you an example, we were going on vacation a couple of weeks ago, and one of the funeral homes here in town called me, and they said, "Hey, we don't have anybody somebody out of town, and they don't have anybody that can do their funeral. Can you do that?" And I've never turned down a funeral. I've turned down lots of weddings and stuff, but I've never turned down a funeral. And I said, "Well, when is it?" And he said, "June 12th. I was like, I'm going to be out of town on June 12th. But I told him, I said, "Let me see if I can work something out on that." Because my mind, I thought, well, we're only going to Branson. I could come back, do the funeral, and go back. And then I thought, you big dummy, this is what's been going on in your mind and in your heart for a while now. I was like, you're just going to have to say no. Even though you want to do it, you just have to say no. So I called him back, and I said, as much as I hate to tell you this, I just can't do that. I'm going to be out of town, and I'm just not going to be able to do that. But for the past, I'm going to say a couple of years now, honestly, I've just been you may not be able to tell it, because God has still been moving through my funk. God has still been moving. We have been baptizing young people, seems like left and right in some cases. Had baptisms this year. God is still moving in my life. He's still moving in the ministry He called me to do. It's not that. It's not that I have been completely broken. It's not that I've been, I haven't left God. I'm still focused on God. God is the main part of my life, because if He wasn't, I would be completely broken right now. But there's just something in me. I was like, something's just not right. But I couldn't. People would ask me, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. And people would continue to ask me, are you sure you're fine? I'm like, I'm fine. Because honestly, I didn't know how to tell you that I wasn't fine, if that makes sense. I didn't know how to say what was exactly wrong with me, because it wasn't like God wasn't moving in my life. It wasn't like I wasn't still excited about God. It wasn't like I was still excited to come in here and be motivated on Wednesday nights to give the message to as many young people as I could. It wasn't about that. But I thought, I don't know how to tell you what is wrong with me. So one day I'm driving around. I'm John Orvik. I help him some out there on the ranch. And I'm just a couple months ago, I'm driving around the brush hog. No, actually I was spraying. I was spraying weeds. And I'm spraying around, and I found a Craig Groeschel. Anybody know him? Ever heard of him? So I was listening to a message of his, and it's called, his message series was Heal Your Hurting Mind. And I listened to that first message on Heal Your Hurting Mind, and he talked about his burnout. And he talked about things going on in his life. And as I listened to the whole series while I was spraying that day, and I thought, that's me. My mind is hurting. My mind, I felt like my soul was good. I'm saved. I love Jesus. I believe I am going to heaven today if good Lord called me back. But my mind was just hurting. And like I said, I'll get into some detail about some things, because I don't want you all to think you are in it alone. All right? When we accept Jesus Christ, we become justified, just as if I've never sinned. Salvation is instant. If you want to put that up there. Salvation is instant, but healing can be a journey. Sanctification can take some time. And if you ever wonder what sanctification is, I looked it up. It says a process of being renewed. It said most of the time when Christians use the word sanctification, they were referring to the ongoing work of God to make a believer more like Jesus. So when you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, your salvation is instant. But your healing might still be a journey. Your healing might still be a process. Maybe you're sitting out there and you're dealing with anger, depression, anxiety, frustration, exhaustion in my case, just exhausted of everything that was going on, and get to a point, it's like, Lord, why is all this? Is like, I'm serving you, I'm doing everything I can, but one thing after another, it just kind of keeps happening. I'm just exhausted. I'm just tired. I just need a break. And I thought, but for me, it's like that makes me weak, needing that break. But our salvation is instant. And I think as a church body, sometimes we don't do people's service. We lead them to Christ. We get them there, and I think sometimes maybe not intentionally, we let them think that everything will be perfect as soon as they accept Jesus. But not everything's completely perfect. Sometimes instant stuff is instant when we do that. But other times, it will be a journey. It will be a process that we have to go through. And so I want everybody to know that getting help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. So I don't want you to leave here today. Maybe at the end of the service, you'll find your way to one of these altars and we can pray with you. But I do not want you to leave here today thinking you're walking this walk alone. I want you to be able to reach out to somebody, talk to somebody, myself, Pastor Dennis, Pastor Steve, Pastor Matt, somebody. You got to start somewhere, church. You got to start somewhere. So that day that I heard that, I thought, we'll get to the do you want to, but I sent that to someone that I confide in sometimes, and I said, this is me. This is where I'm at. My mind just hurts, and I don't really know what to do about it. I don't really know where to go. But as I listened to that, I thought, I am tired of the devil having control of my mind, because we're going to talk about the guy at the pool of Bethesda when Jesus asked him, do you want to get well? And I began to think, as I was reading around, I thought I asked myself, I said, Jeff, do you want to get well? Or are you just at a point where you think this is what it's ever going to be? I just like being a pastor, being a youth, it's just going to be hard. That's just what it is. It's going to be hard because they all have issues I need to help them through, and I don't have time to do my own. It's just going to be the way it is. Just suck it up and deal with it. And as I'm riding around, I thought, Jeff, do you want to? Because if you want to, there's a way to get there. There's a process to get there. It's like, do you want it? And I think sometimes we relate, and maybe we, whatever it is we're going through, it becomes our identity, so to speak. It's like, oh, it's just always going to be hard. It's just the way it's always been. My parents were this way. My dad was this way. My mom was this way. I've always been this way. It's just going to be this way. Do you want to? Well, I decided that day, then and there, and I'm going to tell you, that's just a couple months ago, so I am still in a process. But I decided that day, I do want to. I do want to get back to where I was before, where when somebody asks me if I'm fine, when I say, yeah, I'm fine, I really am fine. I am good. I want to get back to that point, because for the last, it started 6-7 years ago, but for the last, couple of years, I just haven't been right. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this that much longer. I don't know how much longer that I can continue to be a youth pastor and be a pastor and deal with everything if something doesn't change in my life. So I thought, but I don't want to do anything else. I gave up. I gave up my business. I gave up different things in my life to follow a calling I believe that God gave me. So this is what I want to do. This is what I feel like I'm called to do. I don't want to do anything else. But I thought, I don't know if I can continue to do this for that much longer if something doesn't change. But I thought, Lord, I told him in that tractor that day, I go, Lord, I do want to get better. And so some of you may be dealing, we talk about mental health. My granny, well, I've seen my granny. I mean, you can ask them when you get to heaven, but I've seen my granny locked in rubber rooms. My granny had a nervous breakdown when she was in her 40s. Over years, we found out things that happened to her as her childhood, but she literally had chemical imbalance. She was bipolar. I've talked to a lot of people, young people too, that tell me they're bipolar. I'm like, nah, you ain't bipolar. I live with bipolar. I've seen bipolar. I know what bipolar really is, and she had some legitimate issues. But my granny was one of the most godly women that I ever know. She struggled with mental health her entire life. But yet she was still one of the most godly women I've ever met in my life. And I don't know why God didn't just heal her of that. I don't know. Because I think every doctor she came in contact with, she told them about Jesus. I don't know. So You can struggle with these things and still be saved. You can struggle with these things and still be a true Christian. You can struggle with these things and still be right with God, but there's just some things going on. Maybe you are clinically got something going on. Maybe you need to be praying that God puts you in the right place at the right time with the right people that will give you the right, medication is good to a point. Maybe you'll find a person to give you the right medication to help you get through these things. But sometimes I think we, in the society we live in, we get to the point where we identify with whatever it is we're going through. And maybe we don't want to get away from our crutch that I'm going to pick up here in a second. We don't want to get away from those things. But I can tell you that even when you're struggling with things, God is the answer. My granny told me one time, she said, Jeff, if it was not for having God in my life, I would have taken my life a long time ago. Because she goes, there's been times I just get tired of dealing with all this. But I know that God is my rock. God is the one that will get me through this. So, mental health is real, and it's something that the church should be the safest place that we can talk about these things. And sometimes I feel like we feel like it's the most unsafe place we can talk about these things, because people will judge us. People will think differently about us. People will think we're weak. People will think, because I may leave here now and you may go to Pastor Dennis and say, yeah, we don't need that dude being our youth pastor anymore, being our associate pastor. I don't know, maybe you'll do that. And if you do, that's fine. Good Lord, take me somewhere else. But I'm just saying it should be the safest place for us to talk about our mental health. So I'm just going to be honest with you. My journey kind of started, if you'll throw up the, this is I don't have my dads up there, but this is my granny and grandpa in the bottom middle, my mom and my stepdad up there, and my Uncle Gary, who was like my dad, helped raise me. And like I said, my dad wasn't in the picture. I don't have a picture of my dad's tombstone, but you maybe can't read those. But my granny, who I talked about, was a rock. September 15th, 2017, my granny went on to be with Jesus. And we literally had to shut her off in Mercy Hospital that day. I'm sorry that we were in Cox that day, but I said, they've got this wrong. My granny's going home. But we shut her off, and everything got quiet. And thankfully, shortly thereafter, she passed away and went on to be with Jesus. My Uncle Gary, 2 weeks later, who was another rock in my life, unexpectedly went on to be with Jesus. My grandpa, 2 years pretty much, just a few weeks apart from my granny going on to be with Jesus, August 21st, 2019, my grandpa went on to be with Jesus, who literally, I lived beside him and my granny all my life. And like I said, another father figure in my life between him and my uncle. January 18th, 2022, my mom was tragically killed in front of the home where I live at now, where I was raised. And for several months, all my remembrance of my mom was the paint that outlined her body where her body fell that day. 2023, April 25th, almost, a little over a year later, my stepdad passed away. In between that time, I thought, why in the world, God, did you take a woman who was a godly woman on fire for Jesus, help me with the youth, all sorts of things. Why would you take her and leave him? Because me and my stepdad did not have a good relationship at all. And I thought, why would you do that? I even told him that day they were going to try to air evac her to Springfield, and we got the phone call. We were in Mountain Grove, and we got the phone call that she didn't make it. And I told him, I said, David, Mom didn't make it. He said, it should have been me. And I know I've said this before to some of you. And I thought in my head, I said, yeah, it should have been you. Shouldn't have been her. It should have been you. But I thought, God, why would you do that to her? Why would you do that to me? Because I don't even like this man. So David had cancer, bladder cancer, he had a lot of stuff. His cancer came back, and it was up to me to take care of a man that I didn't like, didn't really care for. But one day he had called me, woke me up, his catheter, I won't go into great details, but anyways, had to take care. I took him to the hospital, took him to the ER, got him home that night, got him back in bed, and he went into the restroom, and I hear him holler. And I went there and he said, Jeff, I've messed myself. And I thought, God, I am not cleaning this man up that I don't like. And God said, well, you have a choice to make right now, Jeff. You will either clean him up and be the Christian that you proclaim to be, or you will walk away and leave a devastating impact on the kingdom of God and maybe his eternal soul. So I went ahead and I did that, and I began to realize at that point what God means when he says, love your enemies, do good to those who don't do good to you, love your neighbor as yourself. It hit home with me that night. 4 days after, put that back up there real quick. 4 days after my stepdad died, April 29th, 2023, my dad passed away. April 29th, 2023. And I was just like, God, why? I don't want it. I did all their funerals except for my grandpa's because it seemed like the thing to do. And I still think it was the thing to do. But I never really processed their passing, if that makes sense. I began to realize in the last couple of months I never really have processed everything that went on there and everything that they meant to me and everything that happened during this. I just never really, I just had to move on. You know, just had to move on, keep moving on, because I had a youth group who was dependent on me. I had a church that was dependent on me. I didn't have time to mourn. I didn't have time to do all the sissy stuff. I needed to move on. I needed to pull my pants up, put my big boy drawers on, and let's move on. God is faithful, you know, and God was faithful. But God showed me a lot of things during that time, you know, as well. But also, I just moved on. When my uncle had passed away, I sat down in his shop one day, a few weeks after he passed away. I sat down in his shop. He was a big woodworker, and I just broke down. And I thought, man, I don't know what I'm going to do without Granny. I don't know what I'm going to do without Uncle Gary. Little did I know in the next 3 years I was going to lose everybody and that meant anything to. There was a solid foundation in my life. The only one I've got left is Aunt Connie. And I mean, I'm not trying to be, she's older. At this point, every day's a borrowed day, you know. Every day's a borrowed day. I thought, what am I going to do without them? And I began to pick up stuff and begin to do woodworking and different things. Make crafts and stuff. It began to be my thing. I would do it in his shop, and it was healing. It was a process for me, but other things in my life led me to a point where I had that kind of taken away from me. I couldn't do it any longer, and so it just kind of faded to the backdrop, you know. And so a whole nother story there, but we gotta get back into that. But 1 Thessalonians 5:23 and 24 says this. Now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely through and through, one version says, and may your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept sound and blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. He who calls you is faithful. He will do it. What will he do? He will strengthen your mind, steady your thoughts. He will meet you in your anxiety. He will comfort you in your sadness. He will give you a hope when you are hurting. When you feel like there is no hope left, God who says, I will sanctify you completely through and through, the God of peace who calls you is faithful. He will do it. I know that I am not the only one sitting out there today who is dealing with different things. Maybe some of you have it worse than others. Maybe some of you it's just occasionally. Maybe it can be anything from fear. It can be exhaustion. It can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be, just life in general. But you're just like, if I mention it to anybody, if I tell anybody, they're going to think less of me. They're going to judge me for this. They're going to judge me for that. And I'm telling you, church, this is where we need to be able to come along and have each other's back every step of the way. But it says, God says, he who's called you is faithful and he will do it. The problem is a lot of times when these things go on, we think this is just the way it's always going to be. And we don't stay focused on God. We begin to drift, as we talked about on Wednesday night. We begin to stray away from God. We begin to move away from him. Our prayer time. You know what happens when we begin to have anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and things like that? You know the first thing that should be? Is a big old fat check your gauges sign. I should have put that up there. Check your gauges. A blinking red light that is saying, you need to pray. You need to come back in contact with Jesus Christ. I said this a few weeks ago. I'm in the Bible all the time for everybody else. I'm in the Bible all the time for Oakley. I'm in the Bible all the time for Scrabble. I'm in the Bible all the time for Gravy and Spud and Red Hot and Tyra. I'm in the Bible all the time for everybody else. But I'm not always in the Bible for me. I'm not always in the Bible for my hurting mind. And for whatever reason, and the statistics in this book here, it's crazy. It says the average person now has the anxiety level or the depression level of a psychiatric patient in the 1950s. You know, and I don't know why we're like, there's so much stuff going on. And I think sometimes we bring it on ourselves. We're running from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. And sometimes we just need to slow down. Sometimes maybe whatever that is for you, whatever it is that you're going through and you need to heal your hurting mind, maybe you need to eat a protein bar. Maybe you need to go on a walk. Maybe you got to get in better shape, maybe you need to take a minute to pray more. We all need to pray more. Every one of us need to pray more. Maybe you need to go fishing at Montauk. Maybe you need to go kill something. I don't know. Maybe you need to come on teen camp and shoot a potato gun, because we're going to do that. We are going to do that. I sent squirrel here. Apparently my phone has seen me looking up potato guns. And so I asked our resident engineer who's teaching us to make us potato guns. But then I get this reel of this dude making a cannon. A cannon. I sent that to Steve, and he goes, you should not have sent me to that. And I said, that is exactly why I sent that to you. So I'm praying that we have a cannon, and we're going to shoot that plumb over the RV park. Yes. Pray now. I don't know. Maybe whatever it is you need to do, God said, I will meet you. God's grace is sufficient, but it needs our faith to meet His grace. Absolutely needs our faith to meet His grace. So what will He do? He will do everything that He said He will do. If your mind is hurting, He will strengthen you. If your thoughts are all over the place, He will steady your thoughts. He will meet you in your anxiety. He will comfort you in your sadness. Some of you sitting out there right now today are sad for different reasons in your life. He will comfort you in your sadness. I can only imagine what it's going to be like when I believe when we walk into heaven, somebody's going to give us a big hug. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be God. I don't know if it's going to be Jesus. I don't know if it's going to be our loved one. I don't know if it's going to be the disciples. I don't know, but somebody's going to give us a hug. So to comfort you in your sadness, He will give you hope when you are hurting, because He is faithful. He is faithful to meet us where we are at. But at times, we have to take the first step and say, I'm hurting. I need help. Just this last week, of course, I won't mention names, but this last week, I had a text from one of the teenagers. They're going through some stuff, having some bad thoughts, dealing with some anxiety, dealing with depression. First thing you got to do is admit it, right? First thing you got to do is admit it. The very next day, I woke up to a text from a teenager that said, I need help. Basically, it said, I have fallen and I can't get up. I need help. I said, well, come back. You got to start somewhere. That's all. I said, I don't have all the answers for you right now, but I know where you got to start. I know where you got to go. You know, I know who you got to go see. Went to Branson. Went to the All the God store over there, All Jesus store, whatever it's called, and they were sold out. But it was a shirt I want. It says, I know a guy. I know a guy. I know a guy. But here's the deal, guys. When we talk about our mental health affects our relationships, our decisions, our attitude, our energy, our faith. My attitude towards certain people probably wasn't the best. Dirk thinks I'm mad at him. I ain't mad at him. I just messed up in the head. But it affects everything. It's a vital part. We are a mind, soul, and body, just the way God created us to be. Anxiety and things went on in the Bible. I don't want to say that it can't be our crutch. It can't be something we hang our hat on. But it's real. Elijah in 1 Kings, the guy that raised people from the dead, fire from heaven. You know, I mean, whoo, fire come down. Better than any flamethrower you can buy at Baldridge Outdoors. Better than anything you can buy there. But he said, one of the greatest things ever, slaughtered 400 Baal prophets, you know. I mean, the guy had seen it all. But yet if you turn to 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 2 through 4, it says this. So Jezebel sent a message to Elijah saying, may the gods punish me and do so severely if I don't make you like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. She was talking about her prophets. Then Elijah became afraid and immediately ran for his life. And when he came to Beersheba that belonged to Judah, he left his servant there, but he went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die. He said, I have had enough. Lord, take my life. Is there anybody else in there besides me said, Lord, I just had enough. Enough is enough, you know. Lord, I've just had enough. Elijah, one of the greatest prophets ever, said that. David in Psalms 13:1 says, how long will you hide your face from me, God? How long will you forsaken me? Psalms 22:1, he says, my God, why have you abandoned me? It says David was a man after God's own heart. And he's going through a spell. He's having an issue. He's dealing with some stuff. How long will you... Jeremiah's like, man, Jeremiah was a weeping prophet. You read chapter 20, verse 14 through 18. I'm not going to read it all, but you read it all. Jeremiah, he wanted out. He was dealing. He wanted out. He's like, I am done. Get me out of here. He-Man, he said, not He-Man, the Marvel character. He-Man in the Bible. He was a singer, a songwriter, a man of great wisdom. Said he was a great father. But in Psalms 88, 3 and 4, he says, I have had enough trouble. I am like a man without strength. And honestly, that's where I was a couple months ago even. I just felt like I didn't have any strength left. From that point in time when my dad died in the last couple of years, and this I won't go into great detail on, but the last couple of years I have found myself in the midst of all that, raising an 11-year-old now, soon to be 13-year-old now, daughter. And I thought, how am I going to do that? It's like, I can't, what else can happen? Because I want to raise her as a godly young lady. I don't want to mess this up. And I said, I got all kinds of, there's reasons why I feel like I will mess it up. I'm not going to go into that, but I don't want to mess it up. I want to make sure I do this right. And she's got her own struggles in life. She's got her own people. Gracie is our niece. Got her when she was 2, and just a lot of people in her life have left her. She's not in here right now, but she has some wild dreams and different things going on. I know it all goes back to the fear of being left, the fear of being gone. And I finally told her the other day, this weekend, she's telling me about this dream. I said, sweetie, I'm going to promise you I ain't going nowhere. I will hunt down and stab the devil himself before I let anything happen to you. I will kill him with my bare hands. You ever watch that show Taken? That'd be me on steroids. That will never happen, but she has that fear. Back in school, I had a little issue going on, and she said, are they going to abandon me too? And so I was like, God, I don't know if I have the strength to do all of this anymore. But he said, Jeff, I placed you in her life for a reason, and you're going to be just fine. I know that, but even days I feel like I'm a failure as a dad. I feel like I'm a failure as a youth pastor. I told one of those young people on Wednesday night, I said, if I have failed you in any way, I am sorry. Because I would give my life for my young people. I would. I'd give my life for each and every one of them in a heartbeat. Same way, the devil come again. Devil ever storms in that over there, he better be ready for a fight because I'm going to hurt him bad. But I told him, I said, if I have failed you in any way, I am sorry. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to fail. I want to make heaven crowded. Statistics show that life-altering pain isn't necessarily the stuff that happens tomorrow, like now, circumstantial right now. Like the day that my mom passed away, that was devastating pain that day. But he says, life-altering pain isn't necessarily those things that happen right then. But it's a pain that God could heal, but we choose to live with. The anxiety we normalize, the bitterness you justify because I can't believe they did that to me. I can't believe they said those things. The bitterness that you justify, the exhaustion you rationalize, the pain you used to fight against, but now you just accept it. It's just a way you try to numb the pain. Whatever it be. I used alcohol, other people use other things, but you just accept it. It's the way I'm always going to be. Can I be honest with you? And we're going to move into the do you wanna? Healing requires movement. If you read the story in John chapter 5, verse 1 through 8, this is a story of the man that was beside the well. When I listened to that day and I was driving around that field, for those of you that have a Bible, not judging, but you should have a Bible. I'll take a drink while you're fighting. Dirk, you got your Bible? It ain't open. What are you doing? No, I know you're taking notes. I'm messing with you. Dirk's like he's like my, the dog you want to slap around up here. I pick on Dirk all the time. But in John 5, 1 through 8, this is Jesus. He was at a like a festival, I believe, and kind of took a detour, so to speak. It said a Jewish festival took place, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And by the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there is a pool called Bethesda. Bethesda stands for the house of grace. That's what it says. So he was at Bethesda. And in Aramaic, which has 5 colonnades, in the Bible, 5 represents grace. So Jesus went to the pool of grace because he's full of grace. But he went there and he found a man. Within these lay a large number of the disabled, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and realized he had already been there a long time, he said to him, and this is what slapped me in the face, because I didn't say this before, but this was literally, I'd heard this same scripture 2 days in a row on 2 different podcasts. Do you want to get well? Now you would think that man we couldn't jump up and down because he was paralyzed. But you'd think he would shout, scream, absolutely I want it. Where you been all my life? Yes, I've been waiting for this moment. Yeah, woo, whatever. You like how I pulled my mic away because I knew that was going to hurt somebody. I thought about it. It's like, yes, you'd think that was the way he would be. But the first thing he does is says, sir, the disabled man answered, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, someone goes down ahead of me. Now, I understand there's a story, but I believe I believe there are different stories there. Okay, I personally wasn't sitting by the pool. If you don't know the stories, the story, the account goes an angel would come and stir the water, and the first one that could get into that stirred water would be healed of whatever they were doing in. I just feel like so many times, and this man is a good representation, Jesus can come to us and say, just like that day, do you want to get better, Jeff, or are you just going to keep doing what you're doing? And I think a lot of times, kind of like this man did, we just we use what we're going through as a crutch, and we don't really want to get rid of it. It's like it's just easier to stay on the porch sometimes. Because see, if we get off the porch and get into the water, that requires us to move. That requires us to acknowledge what is going on in our lives. That requires us to deal with what we're going to do. Sometimes it's just easier to make excuses and not actually deal with what's going on in our lives. Sometimes it's just easier to say, well, this is just the way it's always been. Poor me, things happen. And I think so many times we get dependent on a crutch in our life instead of taking the effort to actually get out of that. Because in the last year or two, I told the Lord, I said, maybe I'm just not meant to be happy in certain aspects of my life. Maybe that's just not what you intend for me to be. And that day he told me, he said, Jeff, I want you to have life and have it more abundantly. I want everybody to realize what it is like to feel like you are held by the hand of Jesus, and God has you in a hug, and you can get through anything as long as God is the center of your life. So most of the time, Jesus will ask us to meet His grace with your faith. Not all the time, I get it. Okay? But most of the time, it's going to take us meeting Jesus. Grace initiates and faith participates. If we have our eyes fixed on Jesus, nothing is impossible. In the Hebrew, samak represents fixed. You know what that means? To prop, to lean, to rest your full weight upon. I think a lot of times we spend too much time with our weight rested fully on something else other than God. We spend so much time leaning on our own courage, our own strength. That was me. I am go, go, go. I don't need anybody else. I spend so much time leaning on our own crutches, on our own stuff. And he says, for those who are fixed, whose eyes are fixed on Jesus, I will do these things. Think of grace as God's riches at Christ's expense. All right? God's riches at Christ's expense. We are saved by grace through our faith. But the exhaustion maybe that you're dealing with, the anger that you're dealing with, the negativity. Some of you are just negative about everything. Some of you you don't ever have anything good to say. The pain that you're trying to numb, the hopelessness that you are feeling right now. All of these things to get better requires movement. You know, that guy was spending so much time trying to get to the water, but thank God the living water came to him. The living water came to him where he was at. And I believe God wants to come to where you are at. The Bible says in Revelation 3:20, I stand at the door and knock, but you got to open it. You got to acknowledge if Scrabble, if you have if you had 104 fever, I'm probably going to know it. But I'm just saying, if you got something going on in your life, I'm not going to know it if you don't tell me. Yeah, I'm not going to know it if you're struggling with something if you don't let me know. And I think a lot of times it's like, guys, like you got to. It requires movement on our part to do these things. I think I say this all the time and I know. Don't anybody get mad at me. You know, just say that's just me saying things because it sounds really good up here right now. We say we want to lose 100 pounds, but then we won't get off the couch and put away the snacks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we say we want to get better. We say we want our mental health to get better. We say we want to quit dealing with the anxiety. We're tired of all this stuff, but we just don't go anywhere with it. We take God and put Him on the back burner instead of keeping Him on the front. So if you always focus on what's wrong, you will never get right. Too many of you are holding on. You say, I know God's got good things planned for me in my life, but you won't let go of where you came from. You keep going back to it. As the famous philosopher KG said, I put things down at the foot of God, but I keep going back and picking them up. Some of you are like, I know God's got big plans, but you will not let go of where you're at. It says, if you always focus on what's wrong, you will never get right. Do what you can and trust God to do what you can't. Well, this, ladies, if you come up here to the altar, if you come up here, any lady who wants to come to the altar, feel free. But you other ladies, come to the piano. Isaiah 26:3 says this is the NIV version. It says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, fixed. I talk about samak in the Hebrew, steadfast, fixed, the one who prop, they lean, they rest their full weight upon God. It says, because they trust in you. So you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Not that they trust in the fear that they have. Not if you're trusting in the depression that you think defines you. Not if you're trusting in the anger that is eating you alive right now. And I know about the anger that will eat you alive. I first hated my dad, and then I hated my stepdad. The anger that I had for those two men. But the openness that I had the night that I actually cleaned my stepfather up. Something changed in me that day. Last night, I was talking to someone at Gracie's recital, and they said, when I get angry, so angry, I cry. And I sat there and I thought, I almost said me too. And then I thought, no, I don't, God. I don't get angry. I don't get that angry anymore. I used to get that angry where I would cry, but I don't get that angry anymore. You want to know why? Because God, who is faithful, will help you with those things.
Amen. Yes.
So we're going to close with the first thing. But he said, he doesn't say he's going to keep in perfect peace those who death scroll on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. I'm not saying there's not good things on there. So all of you young people and people that don't come up to me later and say, there's some good Christian things. I know that. But those who death scroll, those who are always looking for the negative, those who are the rage baiting, you're just so mad. He doesn't say I'll keep in perfect peace those who are on Facebook and you're looking at all the negative stuff and you're looking at all the sad stuff, and we all do it. I preached a message. We get caught up in the stupid. I get on Facebook and I'll get on there and I'll see something, and it's like this dumbest, stupidest conversations go on. And then I sit there and think, why did I waste those 5 minutes of my life on this? But he doesn't say I'm going to keep in perfect peace, because if you ever stay too long on those things, your algorithm completely fills it, and that's all you get. That's all you get. So he doesn't say I'm going to keep in perfect peace those who do all those things. He says I'll keep in perfect peace those who are steadfast, fixed on me. Let's go back. We open up these altars. This is your altar call. 1 Thessalonians 5:23 and 24 says, now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely. Remember, salvation is instant, but healing is a journey. So may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, or through and through. And may your whole spirit, soul, and body, because that's what we are. People can see if we have a broken leg. People can see if we have a broken arm. People can see those things, but they can't always see what's in your soul. They can't always see what's going on in your spirit. But your body be kept, your spirit, soul, and body be kept sound and blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. He who calls you is faithful, and he will do it. What did I say he will do? He will strengthen your mind. He will steady your thoughts. He will meet you in your anxiety. He will comfort you in your sadness. He will give you a hope where you are hurting. So many times on our own accord, we are trying to get to the water, and God is saying, I will bring the living water to you when you become fixed on me again. Instead of all the excuses and all the crutches that we hold in life. So, if you're here today and you're dealing with anything, I don't care. You want to find your way to these altars? Find your way to these altars and we will pray with you.
Yes.
But do not leave here today the same as you came in here. If you do, that's on you, because it takes movement, right? Yes. To move towards the water takes movement. And I think sometimes we don't want to move because it's going to require us to do something. So as they sing the song this morning, if that's you and you need prayer, come to the altar.